everyone, my name is Ryan Cam and welcome back to my road to Alien Romulus, where I'm going to be covering all the Alien movies I have yet to cover in honor of Alien Romulus coming in just a couple weeks, or just under that. I've already covered Aliens as part of this series, link in the right-hand corner if you'd like to go check that out. But now it's time to talk about Alien 3, or Alien to the Third Power, as what it always looked like to me in the title. But to help me review it is someone that I have had on the channel once before in a Talking Silence episode, but never in a solo collab, and I'm glad that I have him on. He just celebrated 10,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel from Blacktastic Media. It is TJ. TJ, thank you for joining me.
Hey, my pleasure, man. I'm glad to actually get some one-on-one time with you and discuss an interesting movie.
TJ is actually a filmmaker, and so I've brought on the right person to talk about Alien 3 because Alien 3 has a complicated history, and that's putting it rather mildly. When people talk about studio interference, it's either this movie or the Justice League movie we got several years back. And the Snyder one, of course, I don't want to go into that quagmire in this video. The point I'm trying to get at is that studio interference is usually linked to those two movies, and Alien 3 is usually involved in the conversation. David Fincher, who directed this movie, absolutely despises this movie's existence. I'm pretty sure if he could go the Alan Smithy route, he would probably do it. Fincher, I mean, we all know who he is. He directed Seven, Gone Girl. He's yet to miss, in my opinion. But this is a movie, being Alien 3, that I have never personally hated. It's got problems, sure, and I acknowledge the problems freely, and I will throughout this video. But TJ, I think we're both in the minority here when I say that we both don't hate this movie.
I remember watching the original trailer the year before the movie came out. And it was a different trailer. It says, "On Earth, everybody can hear you scream." And I'm with my buddies. We're like, "Oh my God, I think we seen Terminator 2 opening night." And back then, they premiered a teaser a year in advance. And the night we seen Terminator 2 was the night they premiered the teaser trailer for Alien 3, and the crowd went nuts. It showed the egg and the planet that looks like ropes. You know, went back to the first Alien and it cracked open. I'm like, we're getting another Alien movie. And it says Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, oh my God. So this was cause for celebration. Me and my good friend, Richard Campbell, we would watch Alien, then Aliens, then Alien, then Aliens leading up to this. I had them both on VHS, and we were big, humongous Alien fans. So this was great. The day it came out, we both took the day off work and went to the very first premiere, earliest one we could on a Friday, the earliest showing. And it was interesting. A great way for me to end the trilogy. The movie was drab, it was dreary, it was not a happy film. And I really appreciate that. I remember the opening scene, the opening credits, they showed this planet and you see the spaceship and the sun disappears behind the planet and the music goes, you felt the doom was coming. And Sigourney Weaver, I was wondering, why is she bald in this movie from all the marketing and the alien coming up to her face and not killing her? I couldn't wait to see this movie. So the theater was pretty packed, you know. Back then, Aliens was like the biggest thing. Everybody was waiting for it, that and Terminator. And it got a lot of mixed receptions when the movie came out. But personally, I didn't dislike it. It took me a while to swallow everything because I thought it was a perfect bookend. Sigourney Weaver's in all three movies, the sacrificial thing she did in this movie to end the trilogy. I thought it was a perfect way to end the trilogy. And this movie is fascinating because all the behind the scenes, all the chatter about David Fincher and the studio interference, because I remember David Fincher for making Madonna videos. So his visuals, I'm like, oh, this guy's great. And I liked his approach. He asked Sigourney Weaver, how much would it cost for me to have you shave your hair? She goes, well, you have to give me a lot of money. So his approach, he was totally taking his movie series in a different direction. I really appreciate that. And with studio interference, because it had previous writers and previous stories and previous, blueprints, what they wanted to do, I love the fact it was a planet infested with lice and everybody had to be bald. I like the fact it was a religious planet, like a gigantic church, and all these men did horrible things throughout their life,
Mhm.
and they'd never seen a woman in years. So the tension within the first 15 minutes was perfect. And the fact that the alien now came from a canine, Rockwaller. So it's faster, it's vicious, it's an animal. I thought it was a great premise. But we're one of the few that probably enjoy the premise. But I think the biggest problem I have with this film, digital were just coming into filmmaking. They were still shooting movies on film. It was
Mhm.
going to the digital age, and this movie I appreciate it because they still use practical effects.
Yeah.
They use stop. They showed the alien on little sticks. It was moving the alien like this, so it was stop motion, digital. So it was a fascinating effort they put into it. The way it looked on screen wasn't quite right, but I get what they were trying to do.
I don't know if you've heard about this being in existence or not, but a graphic novel was released called Alien 3: The Unproduced Screenplay. And it basically acts as a what could have been. It's a fascinating read. I really need to reread it. But what I loved from the jump of this movie is how the 20th Century Fox logo kicks on, it has the fanfare, and then that final note holds, and then it just goes straight into like the Alien 3 theme. I love that. I love how it
Yeah,
just sets the tone immediately. And you were touching on the very beginning. Basically, Ripley, Hicks, and Newt, they're all in the ship. They're going back home, but there's a face hugger in there, and well, Ripley is the sole survivor, and Hicks and Newt do not make it. This made everybody really mad from all the research that I have done. I don't know. I can see it from both sides, people being like it's fine, and then other people absolutely hating it. I think the ending of Aliens, where Ripley is with Newt and with Hicks, and they're like going back home, is like that's like the perfect bookend to Aliens, and then it just feels like they just destroyed that just because we need another sequel. I don't know, TJ. What did you think?
David Fincher is cynical, and he said, "You want me to direct this? I'm going to do it my way." And I think he had a different vision because Aliens was such a action pack, get behind everybody and cheer movie, whereas Alien was a survival horror movie. He wanted to take it back to the horror. And Ripley, the main character, David Fincher was like, you know what? This woman has been infested with this alien her entire life. She has nothing. This alien has taken everything from her. What better way can I portray that by the opening? It takes away Newt and takes away Hicks. And I'm like, that's brilliant. And I know it's hard, but you have to think about it from the standpoint. Ripley's story is a tragic story
Yeah, I agree.
from, from beginning to end. Now, if you've seen the behind the scene footage or the deleted scene, she had a daughter, but in the theatrical version, she had no children, no husband. And this alien became the most important and biggest thing in her life. And once again, when she finally got escaped, she has a mischief family, maybe a nice man to be with, and Newt, a daughter that she never had. And this face hugger takes everything away from her while she's in her cryo chamber sleeping. I think it's brilliant. Like you said, the note, the 20th Century Fox logo, the sun going behind the planet. I've never seen a movie with imagery and sound set the mood so perfect. I thought it was like, I'm like, what's happening here? And her acting was brilliant. One of her eyes was damaged because of the face hugger. We didn't know at the time, but she had been ingested. We didn't know. You thought maybe she just crash landed and she bruised her head. The men coming there with the barking dogs and they shaking the blankets and the clothing and all this lice. I'm like, this is an interesting planet. The wind is blowing and it looks very, very interesting. It looks like any other alien movie. I'm like, wow, okay, we're actually on a planet, and this is a weird looking place. And the way that dog was barking, I'm like, man, what's the deal with that dog? Did it show the face hugger do like this? I'm like, an alien on the way here in that. I said, oh my God. And if you don't pay attention, the opening credits show flashes. They show what's happening. They show the alien waking up. I mean, the face hugger waking up and attacking the chambers and the sleeping quiet chambers. You see it, but it's such in a flash motion way. You really don't know what's going on. When you start piecing things together as she's talking to the people inhabited by the planet, was like, I never felt so much pain for one person in my life because Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is such a likable character. And I thought David Fincher did the boldest thing he could do and absolutely take all hope away within the first 15 minutes. And I'm like, that's brilliant filmmaking. But, things tend to happen with studio interference and things like that.
I agree. And you were touching on the practical effects a little earlier. I love the look of this movie. You were talking about Fiorina 161, which is the name of the planet that Ripley lands on, where the prison planet, I'm just going to call it. I love seeing that. I love seeing how this prison looks. There's a scene where Ripley finds the remains of Bishop, and there's no CGI there. It just looks practical, like someone built that. I that just warms my heart seeing something like that in a weird way. I don't want to come across as weird, but I mean it's like someone who appreciates like I gushed about the visual storytelling of Aliens, so I think I'm entitled to talk about it here. But I just love that. I love that scene. Sigourney Weaver's great. Charles Dance is really good as in this movie as well as Pete Postlewaite. This is a really good cast for this movie, and it's not just the Sigourney Weaver show. Dance and Postlewaite do really good as well.
Yeah. Also, Charles S. Dutton was a powerful presence in this movie. His
Yeah,
voice and the way he kept all the other inmates in line, and just his speech alone, talking to Ripley, said, "Look, ma'am, you don't understand where you're at. You're in a place where these men haven't seen a woman for years. There are rapists, there are blah 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 on this planet, and you really need to be careful." And she's like, "Okay." It didn't phase her one bit, and I love their relationship. And Charles Dance playing the doctor, you're like, why is he in prison? Maybe he's just a malpractice. Everybody has a backstory. Little that you know about it, sometimes the less you know makes for more intensity throughout the film. So Ripley was in a place where, what's worse, this planet or the actual alien that's on this planet now? I mean, she was by herself from beginning to end. And okay, her and the doctor had a relationship. You think, okay, he's going to survive through the film. He's going to be part of the protagonist. Wow, that scene is one of the most precious scenes. How they show the needle of clothes and the air pressure going down. And Sigourney Weaver's looking around, the doctor's looking around. The way the alien moved, very slithery, and the way he grabbed his head through the plastic, I thought it was brilliant practical effects once again. And the way this alien moved, we've never seen an alien move so quick and swiftly like this. And it was quiet. It'd move and not make a noise. And I thought that was great. But like you said, I really like the cast in this movie. A lot of people complain everybody looked the same. Everybody looked like monks.
I mean, it's a prison planet with like very religious like subtext there. So the monk aspect that you just touched on, I think, is very apropos. And I mean, if they're going to be prisoners, then I mean, you might as well like that's your way of saying like welcome to prison, pal, or something to that effect. I thought it like you were talking about unique. I feel like this movie is among the more unique of the Alien series. I feel like, and I don't want to pick on Alien Romulus necessarily, but that movie Fede Alvarez going for more of the traditional 79 version and style of Alien. I'm not complaining. I think the movie looks great. I haven't seen it yet as of this recording, but I am looking forward to it greatly. But with Fincher, I feel like he took the base idea and he made it his own. And the script was just picked apart and just torn to shreds. And we'll touch on more on that in a second because I wanted to bring up a couple things there. But I think the word unique is, I think, the best way that we can describe Alien 3.
It has its own character. At the time, the trilogy, it was the one I watched the most. I love Alien, and I absolutely love Aliens, but three resonated with me because I like the visual style. I've always liked David Fincher as a video director, and I thought he told the best story visually out of the Alien movies. Other movies had a lot of dialogue explaining things, but this movie, just his visuals and the music and the sound design, it was so moist and wet and like liquid sounds. Everything was moist when they touched it. When they got Bishop, they was hooking the little wires up to him to get the recording. Everything sounded wet and moist and liquidy. And I thought that was, it definitely has the most unique sound design of any of the Alien movies that was ever produced. But there's a scene where they're working and this pin drops and it causes an explosion. The
Mhm.
way they and the way the guy talked, he said, but, and the thing dropped in slow motion and exploded. That's brilliant filmmaking. And they're walking later in slow motion after the explosion happened. Visually stunning, nothing's being said. And it stayed up here. Just the visual effects alone and the visual style that David Fincher put on this movie, again, made it very unique.
Like you brought up, Fincher started out in the world of music videos, and he wasn't just doing just some run-of-the-mill artists. He was working with Madonna. He was working with Paula Abdul. Like he was working with heavy, heavy hitters. Like David Fincher, Michael Bay, the Scott brothers of both Tony and Ridley, they all got their start in music videos, which I just find fascinating. And they music videos, and I'm gonna speak as a bit of a layman. TJ's the filmmaker, I'm just the reviewer, but music videos are all about big, bold visuals. And I mean, if anything, like it applies more to the Scotts and Michael Bay, but David Fincher has a lot of big, bold visuals too, just in his own unique way. Watch a movie like Seven, for example. That movie is not just a dreary story, but it just looks dreary too. And this is not a Seven review. That'll be for another time on this channel. But the point I'm trying to get at is that Fincher knew exactly what he was going for with this, and I stress tried to accomplish it. He didn't, which is why he doesn't really like talking about this movie, but he made an attempt to try and make this his own, which is something that'll always be over with me.
Like you said, he was working with the heavy hitters. So he knew how to work with stars. He knew how to work with actors. So he came into this as a young man, you know. So, and when it's your first directorial debut, the studio has all the power. You have no say so. He would come to set, they would hand him another script. He would come the next day. He's like, every day there was some kind of interference. And to pull off what he did is still a decent film. And a lot of people don't talk about the movie The Game. That's the movie he did right after Seven. Love that movie. Where he worked with the great Michael Douglas.
Yeah. And
Great
Sean
movie.
Penn.
Sean Penn that played his brother. That's right. This man is a can't miss. And say what you want to say about Alien 3, it's the one that I watched the most. And visually, it's the one that I think about the most. I like the colors. It was warm looking, the burgundies, the browns, and I really, really enjoyed it, man. And again, to see an alien running upside down through the corridor, and these doors are closing, and when it was sitting there feasting on this one human, to see it actually move like a puppeteer, I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that's horrifying. And the tension, what the third act tension, the chase sequence when they were trying to trap it, I thought was brilliant. It had me on the edge of my seat. Me and my buddy are looking at each other. We're clutching our knuckles. Hey, for as bad as the timing he had working with that studio, that movie has some great sequences that I would never forget.
There's a scrappiness to this movie that I think after Aliens was kind of refreshing because Aliens, you had the forklift, you had the Colonial Marines and massive guns. It very much was a James Cameron movie, but with this one, you're basically stuck on like just like Arrakis with no sandworms, and you don't even have a still suit. Everything that you have is in this prison, and you have to make the best of fighting off like the perfect killing machine in the xenomorph with literally just what you have in this prison. It's very much like a rock and a hard place situation, not just for Ripley, but for everyone else in this prison, because the xenomorph does not really particularly care about any past transgressions. The xenomorph has a target and is just going to go after it no matter what.
I thought the speech she gave when she found out there was an alien on board on the planet, she goes, "You guys have no weapons of any kind." And the guy was trying to explain to her, she goes, "We're effed. There's nothing we can do. And you don't know what you're up against. This thing is a killing machine. It does not stop." And I love her speech when she finally got to the point where she was talking down to these men and trying to explain to them what they're dealing with. I said, "Your men are not prepared for this." And I thought that was great. And I love hearing about the xenomorph from a human standpoint, about it's a perfect killing machine. Never in my life, besides Terminator, have I seen something perfect that is just made for killing.
Yeah.
It has no animosity, it has no remorse. It it is what it is. It's like a shark. It breeds, it eats, it kills, and it's a cycle over. That's what God's plan was for this particular animal to be on this planet. And this xenomorph, it is what it is. And it made it more vicious because now it has canine DNA in it. And it's the most vicious alien we've ever seen. It's the fastest alien. Aliens never ran before. This
No.
thing is running. It can run upside down. I thought the design of this alien was still to my favorite, to this day, my favorite design of this alien. The head was always long, but it was actually elongated, and the mouth was slightly different. And one of my favorite scenes where they were dining in the dining hall, and the alien came from the ceiling and grabbed the guy and just pulled him up.
Yeah,
Everybody's looking around, blood
that was
drops.
terrifying.
The, the guy's holding the chair. Ah! I mean, that is the perfect reaction. And then from that point on, the movie had a tempo that's kept building and building. And I really, really like this movie, man. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of touch on a little bit more on the studio interference side, we could honestly do a whole separate video talking about that, but just for the cliff notes, it started out it started out as one thing. It was being initially developed by William Gibson, and then
Mm.
it was supposed to be directed by Rennie Harlin, who would go on to have a long career that's still going to this day. He had just he has just done The Strangers Chapter 1 earlier this year, but he's had a long career, and Harlan walked away from it because he was sick of Fox and their crap. And so then it was given to another scriptwriter named Eric Red, who wrote movies like The Hitcher and Near Dark. Basically, basically he added some stuff, but then it's just like, yeah, I don't have time for this. And then there was another screenwriter named David Toohey who added a lot of the who added some more stuff. And then there was another element in which the monks or which the prisoners are in fact monks, and they do believe that the xenomorph is in fact the devil incarnate. It's just there are a few movies that I would love to be made about the making of specific movies. stuff like The Wizard of Oz, which it just a legendarily awful production that turned out to be one of the greatest movies ever made. And another one is Alien 3. I would kill to see a movie about the making of Alien 3 and just the craziness involved in that. We could do this all day, but to put a finer point on it, this must have been just a headache for everyone involved. And the fact that TJ and I are both talking about it and pointing out how much we like it. In another world, like if this movie were to come out today, it would just be ripped to shreds. But I feel like when it came out in the 90s, I feel like I don't want to say there was more forgiveness involved, but I think there was like a time where people didn't know all that much stuff like that, or the internet was around, but not to the degree that it is. So it would have been interesting if this movie did come out nowadays, but I think it came out in the 90s. I feel like there was, I don't want to say forgiveness, but I feel like forgiveness or leeway. I'm trying to figure out a word for it, but I feel like it it sits in a place by itself, that being Alien 3, and we've touched on that quite a bit. But like I guess to put a finer point on it, I would love to see a movie made about the making of this movie. I would be there day one.
Yeah, the whole thing about the wooden planet. I mean, they had some weird stories about this movie. But what I remember when this movie came out, opening day, all the Alien fans came to see this movie first. And it was a different time back then. It wasn't like I said, the social um, network and the media wasn't the way it is now. So Alien fans went there. I remember talking in the lobby. We were all just kind of sad that Ripley made the ultimate sacrifice. And when we thought about it, after we talked about it, and we're like, you know what? This movie's pretty cool. There's a perfect bookend. She destroyed the last queen. There could be no more aliens made, so we thought. And her life was tragic, but you know what? It was the ultimate sacrifice. It was poetic. She grabbed the alien and she's falling into the lava. I'm like, wow. I remember we're just sitting there going, this is great. We were all sad, but that's who Ripley was. That's who, and we see interviews with Sigourney Weaver. She was satisfied with the story, but you can tell in certain interviews the studio had interference, and you don't get a whole lot of interviews with David Fincher. I would love to hear his side of the story, but he's kind of aloof and don't want to ever talk about it. I can't blame the guy. But I remember Alien fans liked the movie. Your average everyday moviegoer wouldn't understand because Aliens was such an action-packed movie. They was thought they're gonna get a sequel to that, and it wasn't. He wanted to go back to the romanticism of one alien, one person, Imano versus Imano, and I like that. I really enjoyed the fact that it was just one alien this time terrorizing everybody.
It's kind of, I don't know if we can do a one-to-one comparison to this, but it's like in the Halloween series, we got Halloween 1 and then we got Halloween 2. Halloween 2, for all intents and purposes, closed off the story with Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, and of course we all know that would not happen, but one can dream. But then the next movie was Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, a different story, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. John Carpenter was nowhere near this one. It like I believe like Halloween was even like played in the background as like a TV movie of the week.
Yeah, I remember that. That was odd, but that's how good that Halloween movie was.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that there's some similarities there in that Alien and then Aliens closed things off, and then Alien 3 kind of took things in a similar but different direction, kind of similar to what Halloween 3 did in a similar but different direction. I don't know. I may be out of bounds with that, but when I was rewatching clips to prepare for this, I was like, you know what? This is kind of like Halloween 3 if you really think about it. And then kind of similar to Halloween, the fourth movie just kind of cursed the series never to return. Even though I
Yeah,
don't even though I don't hate the return of Michael Myers, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time.
the mask and all that stuff. Yeah, that's a whole different story. At the time in the 90s, movies were made traditionally. Director, well-known, big studios. Studios were the big boss. Unless you were Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Brian De Palma, you were not the boss. The studio was the boss. They're the one paying all the bills, so you are a work for hire. That's what it was. I think people like David Fincher, Hollywood wasn't ready for that yet. They wasn't ready for a director of his caliber. And you see the brilliance in him in Aliens 3, I like to think. Just like another movie when it first came out, Speed Racer. It was before its time and it didn't do that well. I loved it opening night. I went to see it twice in one weekend. Your average day movie going audience wasn't ready for a movie that was ahead of its time. I felt Alien 3 was ahead of its time, Speed Racer, and a few other movies. And the world just has to catch up to their style of directing and storytelling. And over the years, Alien 3 has gotten a bigger audience, is well liked, and it has a cult following now.
Yeah. I love the Speed Racer movie from the very beginning, partially
Yeah.
because of the style, but also because I grew up watching the anime with my dad.
Yeah.
So there's precious memories attached to that. So as soon as I saw like the opening credits and then straight into the opening race, I'm like, yep, the Wachowskis understood the assignment. Like they got it. They got the style, the tone. It was perfect. But to put the bow on Alien 3 on my scale, I'm going to give this a great rating. This is not a perfect movie by any means, but like TJ and I discussed, this is the most unique of the series because if you look at it, 1,000 yard view or 1,000 mile view, excuse me. If you look at the grand timeline of the franchise after Alien 3, you got Resurrection, which is just terrible. And then you got, then you got Prometheus, which didn't know if it wanted to be a prequel or a sequel or whatever it wanted to be. And then you got Alien Covenant, which was just trying to tie off that but also be standalone. It was just I would argue some
It
of
was a
those
mess.
movies were even more of a mess than Alien 3. But that's I'll touch on that when I get to those movies. But the point I'm trying to get at is that Alien 3, while being severely imperfect and a bit of a mess story-wise, I think TJ, you and I'm sorry. I don't know where that
Okay.
I don't know where that came from. You and I can both agree that in many ways Alien 3 is misunderstood.
It's misunderstood, and they have yet to make a film better than Alien 3 since Alien 3. Resurrection was an abomination, it was a monstrosity. I like Prometheus, but it didn't feel like an alien movie to the very end. I'm like, well, this is how the xenomorph got made? Okay, fine. Nope. I just thought it was some alien on a planet. Okay, Ripley. Riley. You know, he came back to bring his baby back together. Wasn't quite the best. And Alien Covenant was incomplete. And they tried to make it an alien movie at the last minute, and the whole android being evil. There's another android. None of those movies to me are better than Alien 3, in my opinion. Alien 3 was a complete story. And all the problems wasn't the director, it wasn't the story, it was the studio interference what messed this movie up. The acting was better. Prometheus is probably the best since Alien 3, but there's other ones, they're terrible.
Hmm, I agree. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of Alien 3? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. TJ, thank you so much for joining me on this. I'd love to have you back on sometime. Uh, Again, congratulations. Your channel just recently hit 10,000 subscribers. That's going to be me one day. But tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube at Blacktastic Media. I'm a director of short films and documentaries. And after talking to Ryan about this, I love being an independent filmmaker because studio interference will absolutely crush your dreams as a writer, director, and producer. You know, you want to be a director to do what? To tell unique stories or tell stories. And as much as I love Hollywood, Hollywood can be a problem.
Hmm.
But if you like original stories, short stories, please come by the channel. check out my short films. I specialize in horror. Recently, I took a step out of bounds and did a heist film, and I use other YouTubers you might know to be in some of my films. So it's a fun trip. Please stop by. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Definitely do that. Go give them a subscribe. As far as this channel goes, my road to Alien Romulus will be continuing. TJ's already sent me his sympathies and prayers because next up is whatever Alien Resurrection was supposed to be. But for TJ, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you all in the next one. Take care.